Namaste and welcome to another episode of Tech Storytelling. This tech story is for the business leaders and by the business leaders. And today I have an amazing guest, Mr. Thomas Helfrich. Thomas, namaste and welcome to this show.
Well, it's very kind, and namaste to you as well. I don't know if I'm an amazing guest, but we'll see how that pans out. But thank you for having me,
All right,
regardless.
great. So Thomas is the Chief Nerd Officer with AI Nerd. So Thomas, can you please tell us something about your role as Chief Nerd Officer? Very curious to know at AI Nerd. These are a very buzzword into the industry.
AI is one of the biggest buzzwords, and so Nerd Officer. So AINerd.com is my personal blog, but also a community I'm trying to create around professionals who care about technology. They care about the impact of that technology on us in everyday life in the world. And the idea behind AI Nerd, AI with attitude specifically, is just that let's have a little fun with it. Let's not be so serious all the time. And as a nerd officer, I try to do everything I can to make things as unnerdy as possible so you can actually understand it.
Yeah, that's great. So AI with attitude, I mean, would you like to just talk to us? I have the curiosity to know since last couple of weeks, what are those attitudes?
Right. Well, I'm the attitude part of the AI with attitude. So I try to insert some humor and sarcasm, let's say, or perspective, and make things where an AI maybe not, in a real AI would not maybe have that. But I would think that the attitude portion of the AI with attitude is kind of the maybe feel or brand of it is, you know, I don't, AI is a very complicated
Yeah.
technology set. It's very hard to implement. It's very hard to understand its implications. So we put a little attitude on it, maybe humanize it a bit, which is what humans give as attitude. Then it might be easier and more palatable to understand.
Oh yeah, yeah. I know you are the big. I mean, you strongly believe in customer experience. So that's great to know that you are humanizing the AI. So, Thomas, out of curiosity, you help reduce operating cost and generate millions of dollars in revenue by your expertise into AI and intelligent automation. Would you like to walk us through one of any business use case and what are those challenges and business KPI you have improved?
Yeah, absolutely. So, specifically around intelligent automation and AI, which those systems can be sometimes synonymous, but it depends on what you're doing.
Mhm.
But if you look at where you're trying to automate, let's say just start with a simple business process, and you're using a handful of technologies to do that, maybe from robotic process automation, leveraging some machine learning, some computer vision, and you start improving how process from a business improves, you've you've done a few things. One, you've likely made it more consistent, faster, less error prone, and there's less human involvement. That doesn't mean you replace human with technology, but what it does is potentially free up investment of that company to go invest into better user design, better products, more sales capabilities so they can generate more revenue. And when I say that I've done that, this is exactly what companies have done is they've freed a lot of just really honestly wasted time just because that's how the system's been built and because of how we've had to have humans support very mundane, repetitive tasks. Once you've freed that part and you can retool, retrain, or hire new people to go chase revenue or better customer experience, you've really transformed the company. And once you've done that, then you can generate more revenue and more value, let's say, for your customers because of it.
Oh yeah, that's great. So on the similar line, I mean, your company, Systems of Technology, has deep expertise to help customers solve their most difficult IT challenges. So would you like to let us know? I mean, would you like to share few of the most difficult pressing problems or the challenges that your company has solved or the business leaders are facing in today's world?
Yeah, absolutely. So, I've been brought on there to help build the intelligent automation AI practice, and what that translates to is a lot of these custom companies are still struggling to implement these technologies,
Mhm.
and they're still struggling to uh, do it in a way that's cost effective to drive value early. And if you really look at the small, medium business to some of the lower size, bigger companies, a lot of this technology is very daunting. It takes a lot of lift. and it takes a lot of time and expertise that most companies in the world still don't have. Now, if you fast forward 3, 4, 5 years, there's gonna be a
Mhm.
lot. It's gonna be more democratized, gonna be more technology available, cheaper, and to get to the point where you can even consume it as an organization, one of the biggest challenges you'd put out there are in fact the organization itself, the people. So any technology implementation, in particular, when you're looking at automating process or you're looking to uh, take a function that many humans are doing and then leverage a machine in the middle of it, that change alone often is the biggest challenge that any business leader faces, is how do my people now interact with technology that they never had to interact with? It sounds frightening because it has the word AI in it. And they're also sometimes feeling threatened because they think it's going to take their jobs. And in most cases, it does not take the jobs. In almost all cases, it doesn't. What happens is it enables capacity, enables people to
Mhm.
retool, to become more creative, allows them to become more human. So I think what I'd like to see AI do in particular, which I think is maybe a bigger, broader discussion, is I think it can remove the robotic type of behaviors we do, the repetitive, the the non-human things that we do, and allow us to be humans again. So if AI could do anything, it could transform how humans work to free us up to become what we are, which are creative, you know, beings, if you will, that are being stuck to make money and have to go execute things to get things done, have to do the repetitive things, which kind of oppress who we are. And just as maybe a species. And I know it's like I said, a broader topic, but if you take that down to a business that's trying to implement technology, that's at the core. You're taking something that someone's done every day for 10 years, and you're saying we're going to use technology to do that faster and quicker. And now you're going to have this kind of uncomfortableness. You may have to retool or retrain yourself to get back out there. And that by itself, I think, is the biggest challenge. It's not the technology. The technologies that are out there are uh, they're challenging to implement. That's the biggest one. The other one probably would be data.
Oh yeah.
Is a lot of times the data that's available is uh, you don't. It's hard to know if it's the right data to use. Is it truly I don't say clean or procured or
Oh yeah.
curated correctly? But data for AI systems specifically is probably the biggest challenge still.
Mhm.
And then probably the third that's not quite reared its head out yet is the trust of the actual AI model itself. There's an organization called AIglobal.org that is addressing this problem, but they are addressing it from the standpoint of how do you trust the model's decisions that they're not having inequality pre-built into the decision. And that could be from is the model favoring a certain type of race or gender or a demographic that it probably shouldn't. And how do you trust that in a black box model? And specifically, if you apply this maybe to AI being leveraged at a state level or a nation level. So that's gonna. I think those three big things are just there's people, there's the data that's being used, and also then the trust of the actual models themselves.
Oh yeah, great. So great to know that. I mean, people are one of the biggest challenge in any transformation. Then it comes to the data, and number three is the trust, building the trust with technology, with the organization, with the culture. That's great to know that. So you are one of the advocate of customer experience. Uh, what I have what I have faced personally and what I keep talking, one of the challenge in terms of delivering the customer experience is justifying the ROI. So would you like to talk how to justify and measure the ROI in enhancing the customer experience based on your experience?
Yeah, and ROI is a tricky question because if it's only tied to money, right? I mean, a big indicator if your customers are liking the experience is if they're continuing their service or buying new services. So it's a great indicator that what you're providing is a good experience for the customer. The world is just so competitive with everything that likely you always have a choice to go somewhere for this similar service. So if the customers are coming back, they're buying new, then you're probably on the right path of customer experience. The other side of the customer experience, and I also refer to as the employee experience side.
Mhm.
So if your employees are happy, your attrition rates are low, it's and you're generally seeing good outcomes, then the experience and the tone and the I don't know how you'd say this, the just general demeanor of your employees are better. That's going to transcend over to your customer base. That's going to feel that in chat if you're still using a non-AI based chat, or if they pick up a phone or they write an email back, or just general, hey, I'm going to work a little bit harder to write this code a little better. That all transcends to doing things just a little bit better, a
Yeah.
little bit nicer. And so it's on both sides of the experience. So if you've automated, if I go back to kind of how intelligent automation works, if you've automated like a lot of the steps and processes that kind of drive people down and make it very mundane, and you've made it so they
Uh-huh.
could be freer to deal with harder problems, more human problems, if you will, typically you'll see a lift in the organization's spirit and how they execute. They're not always fixing things that were errors from somebody else. There was, all these things kind of start working out where it trends towards a happier, more productive workforce, a more engaged workforce.
Uh-huh.
That becomes part of the customer experience because they'll see this. Now, it may not be immediate, but if it's just from the personal tone of it, that's one element. The freeing up of capital to make actually like, let's say a website easier to use or a product more
Yeah.
intuitive,
Uh-huh.
that is certainly measurable. And then finally, if how you've positioned it or the features that you've built that they've been asking for, and they're like, oh, great, because you had capital to go build those things now, that customer experience has also then risen at that point too. So there's a lot of elements to that to get there. And there's certainly not, you've done a lot of consulting, those aren't overnight transformational steps. Those are do this, do that, set this path in place, let that strategy unfold, and then keep harnessing it in.
Oh, yeah, great. So are you saying take care of employee will take care of your customers?
I'd say it's a big part of it. I'd say it's not the only. It's not
Yeah.
seriously not a one pronged strategy, but you
Oh,
definitely need
yeah.
to take care of your employees. Without the people in your organization, um, even if you just have a few to many, right? A few
Yeah.
customers, sorry, a few employees to many customers, you still got to take care of them. You still got to make
Yeah.
their uh, add value to their lives just as much as you're adding value back. And
Yeah.
the more that's off, the worst experience that your company's going to have, and then it's going to be felt at the customer level.
Yeah. That's great. So let me a little bit switch my gear. Digital transformation, and one of the driver is to change the operating model of the company, right? And what I saw interestingly that you have implemented a progressive and modern operating model for delivering intelligent automation and cognitive service platforms. So would you like to talk couple of those operating models for intelligent automation?
Yeah, I could speak to how you get going on it. I think it's probably if companies who, let's say, are watching this are already kind of in the throes of it, it'll they have their way, their strategy, and they're doing this. I would say though, if you start with the idea of a simple approach of you just identify what it is, and we're specific to around maybe intelligent automation or AI, is it has to start with what is the actual problem that you believe that this technology is going to solve? What is the actual business problem?
Mhm.
And from an operating standpoint, if you don't start with just this is what I need to solve, I need more customers to be engaged in X, or I need to reduce my operating costs so I can do Y. If you don't have those fundamental one, two, three things that you're trying to accomplish, it's really hard to really know if the technology itself is going to help you get there. Unlikely the technology by itself will get you there. There is no single silver bullet that helps eliminate a
Mhm.
business problem, but it can certainly be enabled to be solved through technology at times. And in some cases, I'm sure technology will make it worse. And so,
Yeah.
for example, if you have a bad process that you automate really fast, you're going to really see the effects of that, right? So you start with the problem. And then what I find always interesting is how many organizations don't have the next step, which is to formulate a business statement or a mission statement. And if you ask a company like, hey, what is the kind of the mission statement of this transformation, this AI initiative, this intelligent automation play? It almost never happens. Like our mission is to improve the customer experience and our employee engagement by automating processes that don't need human intervention. Like you
Oh,
never
yeah.
hear anybody say, well, that's easy. Like the one line statement, that's why we're doing all these things is to improve you employees and our customers. And everything else folds into that. So it's not,
Yeah.
there's no overarching. Um, I think at times companies have an uh, false sense of what the speed of the technology will be and the lift and the need for professionals to enable it. So I think what I mean by that is, as you're figuring out the operating model, a lot of companies want to do it themselves, which I
Mhm.
get. You want to own it, but likely automating things and using AI is not a core competency, and it's a very expensive one to build. Now, if that core competency is at the fundamental competitive advantage to give you in the marketplace, then yeah, it's probably worth investing. But if it's just there to maybe reduce operating costs and you're trying to trend towards a less paper-based, manual-based
Oh, yeah.
organization so you can do this, it's probably not one you really should hire for, quite honestly. It's one that you should probably pick a good partner, have the right level of a hybrid team of a few of your people involved, and then a bunch of experts that have scale to help you scale behind it. So that operating model is very important because I see a lot of the failing of intelligent automation AI systems that are being put in place is there's too much do it yourself and not enough external help, or they get too much professional services help and not enough doing help. So too much strategy, too much, here's the operating model, here's the COE, but there's no real support on how to do it. As you consider that journey, that's a really important step. You know what the business problems are, you know what the mission statement is. Now, how am I going to actually, industrialize and operationalize this for long term? That's important. Uh, and then you start working through what's a realistic budget, and then the internal challenges of your company of, you know, do they have an MSA, and then do we have to use from a certain vendor list, and then there's all these challenges, like maybe not picking the best partner based on some other processes that limit that. So there's all those pieces you have to consider. uh, and in the day though, you still have to come down to who's gonna, where does this live, and what's the right level of executive sponsorship. So for example, in intelligent automation, if you have the entire COE going to exist, let's say in finance, because they have the first use case, it's long-term a mistake, because the finance piece is not going to represent HR and these other places that these technologies might apply, or in sales or whatever else. So it has to have the right levels of corporate executive sponsorship, and it's got to live at the right level. And I mean, I can go on and on about all the ways you can do this. The point is, if you don't start from the beginning, organize correctly, and have it set up for success, you don't have the funding correctly set up for budgeting of what you're going to do and how long. This is a tree. Once you plant it, you're going to need water and more water on it every year, but you hope to get fruits from that tree. So um, I think if you just start with that core piece of where you're starting from an operating, your chance for success is exponentially better if you've really taken time to take the strategy, to think through it, and then understand, how am I actually going to operationalize and do this today and tomorrow. And I mean, we could do like 2 hours on that topic, but I think if you do that, then you set your organization up
Yeah.
for much better success for any implementation.
Yeah, I'm really enjoying this conversation and a lot of learning this morning and my evening. This is great. I'm a little bit changing the gear now, and I'll talk about the career transformation. So I advocate a lot of people who are coming from project management and a strategic background, especially the people who are from domain and operation background. So would you like to tell us your career trajectory? How did you landed into intelligent automation? And what
Yeah.
would be what would be your 2 cents of advice for those people who just wish to get started into this space?
Yeah, that's and interesting enough, that's a great question. So I don't think anyone's ever asked me that. So I I've always been in business technology. So I came out of the dot-com era as a developer. I, toward the end of that, as the dot-com kind of boom bubble burst, I also realized that though I enjoyed coding and, and development, I was much better at speaking about the technology and its implementation than the enjoyment, passion versus what you're good at, than actually coding it. So uh, you go through I've gone through the path of business technology and advisory and consulting, and about 7, 8 years ago, when I was with one of the larger consulting firms, I got put in a position to say, they knew my technology background. They said, "Hey, go check out these AI companies." And at the time, it was the IBM Watson. It was also, we're in Blue Prism, UiPath, and Automation Anywhere were just starting. And there was like, a few handful of people in those types of organizations. And I saw what this technology could do. And I remember going to my wife saying, "I'm going to go all in on this. This is like trillion-dollar transformation type of stuff. Like the trajectory of what this stuff's going to do is wow. It is the next 30 years of technology." And kind of looked at me. And so the advice I'm going to give is the same advice I took. Is I decided to get really good at one thing initially. So get really good at one aspect of it and then grow from there. And so I got into the weeds on the robotic process automation specifically, of understanding what that technology could do, what the different nuances were between the companies at the time, and how the application could be, but also the shortcomings. It wasn't all blue skies, right? What the shortcomings were, where did I think that market was going to go, and why. And I really got into really narrow and deep on that topic. So if someone's looking to get into anything around AI or intelligent automation, I would tell you, pick something you have a passion for that has applicability that's bigger. So maybe you love machine learning, but make sure you have the skills to be able to do the machine learning. So I personally don't have the math background or on the time anymore to go learn the models and patterns and all the regression pieces that you would need for that. I enjoy that topic, but I wouldn't be into it because it's not me. So pick something that you're very good at. If you're very good at visual, robotic process automation might be a great place to start. Go download one of the, the tools that's free, and, not to promote one or the other, but go download one, get trained, get what you can online from resources, and go train yourself to be that. And then try to go find your first job. But you got to go narrow and deep on something, get in the space. I had a goal of wanting to be more in the executive type of role where you're infecting strategy, or you're pushing the technology in the right way with business. I wanted to less be on a technical side. So if you have to decide I like technical, then
Great.
go that path.
Yeah.
So, and if you like to be executive, then you're gonna have to really get out there and have a point of view, publish, write papers. You're gonna have to do more than just your job to advance, for sure. And you'll have to do a lot of it on your own time. Like stuff like this is all on my own free time. So, but I love it, and it's passionate. It's a passion of mine, as it is, for you. But if you don't have that, if you're not chasing more, you're not going to get more.
Yeah.
And so
Great.
you got to put in the extra time and hours for yourself, for your family, and your passions.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you won't go any further than, don't expect someone to give it to you. That's for sure.
Yeah. That's great advice to the people. My last question to you, and this is out of my curiosity. As you know, yeah, we are just 2 minutes. So a lot of people ask me, do I need to have the coding experience? Do I need to have the coding experience to come into machine learning space? What's your advice to those people who are
I
primarily
would say
from business operation?
I would say if you're getting machine learning specifically, having coding and understanding that, and for the previous statement, very narrow and deep understanding, and having, learning its application in the model and how to apply it, and actually be able to use one into an example is incredibly important. If you want to be able to compete and be in that model, you better know how to code, leverage the model, and show a business outcome with it, even if it's a rudimentary proof of concept. Absolutely. And that's a lot of work to get to the point to be able to use these models and create, use the algorithms to create models and understand what the data does, and understand that whole world around it is a lot of work. But if you can, the reward is really high for sure, because
All
there's
right.
there's a lot of people in the world that are trying to do this, and if you can do it well, it'd be great.
All right, great. So really I enjoyed having a conversation with you. In fact, learning and getting a lot of insights from you, Thomas. So thanks a lot for joining today, and wish you all the best for all your career endeavors, and hope to see you again.
Thank you so much for having me. Have a great day.
Yeah, same to you. So guys, you are listening to Thomas Helfrich. He's available on LinkedIn. Please do follow him for all the interesting and all the exciting work he's doing over there. Thank you very much. Stay tuned. We'll come up with more channels and the news.